Hey, this is Erik from Bowling for Soup, and you're listening to Morgan Richards on Radio Cardiff.
Hey, I'm Morgan Richards from Radio Cardiff, 98.7 FM, and I'm extremely pleased to say that I'm backstage at the Great Hall music venue here in Cardiff. I'm joined by a band that still, after all this time, are always drunk enough to dance, but now getting a few more hangovers they don't deserve. It's of course punk rock's 101 masterclass from Texas. It's the wonderful Erik Chandler of Bowling for Soup.
How are you?
Hey man, you right?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Yeah, how's things?
Great, great. Just about to wrap up our little tour here, and so getting it's weird when you get to the end because you kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel, and your brain starts to subconsciously tell your body that things are about to be over. So things start shutting down a little bit, but we'll get moving by showtime.
So Erik, first things first, it's safe to say quite a lot of people thought they'd seen the last of you guys on the road after announcing your farewell UK tour back in 2013. But here you are today, back on this side of the pond for yet another round. After everything, what's really changed since that announcement and persuaded you guys to come back for the fans?
Well, at that point, several of us had things outside of the band that were making it kind of difficult for us to be a band anymore, and so we were extremely uncertain about what was going to happen and if we were going to be together anymore as a group, and so that's why we did the farewell tour, was to just give let's give UK fans one last go before we call it a day. And then, as it turns out, all of those situations got themselves worked out, and we are still here. So about a year ago, almost to the day, about a year ago, we had the conversation that it was probably time to head back to the UK and put the feelers out and see if anybody's even still interested in having us come back, and all our entire old team were all super stoked about it, and everybody jumped back on the wagon, and it's pretty awesome to be here with not pushing an album or any kind of new product, and still doing the same kind of numbers that we kind of always have. So it's been the reception has been just overwhelming and absolutely fantastic.
And together, Bone for Soup have now been a band for over the last 21 years, gaining a really cult fan base like no other. But you've always had this really phenomenal connection and fun attribute that's been so key in the band's nature. Looking back on it now, has it meant that little bit more that all the success has come from people embracing that and being able to be yourselves without any smoke and mirrors?
I think one of the proudest things that we can say is that we've always done it our way, and it's always been by our own rules, even when we were told, there were times we were told that we couldn't do things a certain way, and we just did it anyway. And there was back when we were under our last major label contract before we started our own label. It seems like every time we would release something, they would give us this action plan, and we would say no, and they're like, no, that's what you have to do, and then we would just go and do what we were going to do anyway. And then it seemed like 3-4 months later they'd come back and be like, oh, well, you know what you should be doing is actually this. It's like, yeah, that's what we've been doing for a while, so screw you. And so it's nice to think that we've kind of done it by our own rules the whole way through, and we can be proud of that fact.
And throughout your career, it's safe to say you've had some incredible comedy moments, from performing the theme tune to Disney's Phineas and Ferb cartoon, to even people truly believing the Fountains of Wayne track, Stacy's mum, was actually yours. It must just be quite phenomenal to have that reputation for crazy things like this to happen so often.
Yeah, and it's awesome that, like, with the whole Fountains of Wayne situation, it's awesome to be friends with those guys, before any of that went down, so that we could all laugh about it together, rather than us having to go apologize to them without knowing. It was just a funny situation, because that's one of the more ridiculous things that's ever happened with us. But I mean, you get like 12-year-old kids showing up to concerts with holding up signs that say "Play Stacy's Mom," and it's like you just rip their little hearts out, because it's like, that's not us. That is not us at all. So, because that was such a big deal, we actually went into the studio with Fountains of Wayne's consent and recorded the song and put it up to be available on iTunes. And so, yeah, it's awesome.
And with that, to celebrate the band's 20-year anniversary, you last year released a special re-recorded compilation album titled Songs People Actually Like, Volume 1, spanning through your personal favourites of the first 10 years. What made you really want to go back and redo these songs? Is it quite appealing to freshen everything up, especially with the earliest material?
Well, it's the whole idea behind the re-recording of those songs was to kind of give them the chance that they never had before. I mean, or maybe not that, but to be able to present them the way that we wished that we could have in the first place, and whether it was due to a lack of technology or our inexperience in the studio. Those things, they didn't turn out quite as well as we would have wanted them to, and so to go breathe some fresh air into them and be able to present them to people like, okay, this is what we wanted it to sound like in the first place, because now, after so many years of doing this, we're quite efficient in the studio, and so it only seemed logical to us.
And with that, have you guys this year going to be focusing on the second part in that series and re-record songs from the following decade for Volume 2?
That's where it starts to get a little tricky, because that was initially the intention. Volume 1 being from the first 10 years of our career, Volume 2 being from the second half of it. But there starts to get a point in the second half that even if we did go back and re-record something, it's gonna sound exactly the same as it did the first time, and so that's something that we didn't think ahead on very, very well. So we're not exactly sure what Volume 2 will entail, and it may be going back and like rearranging songs and just presenting a different version of them. But that's still kind of off in the future right now. We will be back in the studio this year, but not working on that. It'll be other new material. I wouldn't say that we've actually started writing the new stuff yet, but we have the time frame, like we will be in the studio by July, so
yeah. Okay.
There's time.
And away from Bone for Soup, Erik, you've just recently announced that you'll be finally releasing your first solo record, Viva Pledge Music, after working on this project for about 6 years now. I bet you just can't wait to get this material out properly now with the fans helping you along the way.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that I've been really passionate about for a while, and finally now the time was right to actually pull the trigger on this, and so it's been a long process, but now like I'm so happy that this material is going to see the light of day, and it's great because I finally have the people in place band wise that I feel make it work, and we work well together as a team, and so it's nice to like actually be playing live and feeling like it actually sounds like it's supposed to now after so long, and then in turn to be able to get the album out and in front of people. So it's definitely nothing close to Bowling for Soup at all. All fairly, it's got some pretty dark spots, but as I look back on it, kind of hindsight is 2020. I wrote this group of songs, and without being conscious of it, I kind of was writing predicting my impending divorce that just happened a couple of years ago, and so like having that happen and then looking back at the songs, it's like oh crap, like that, yeah, okay, maybe I could have seen that coming. Then it's just really weird coincidence, but the album goes into some fairly dark territory, just obviously because I wasn't in a happy place at that time, but I really hope people enjoy it.
And Eric, just a couple more things now before you go. Of course, we've mentioned that you guys are going to be heading back into the studio soon and then do a couple of tours here and there. But what does the future now really hold for Bowling for Soup and you as a solo artist going forward?
Well, about 6 weeks ago, we got together for lunch and sat down and just discussed what all we wanted to happen in the near future, and then set down a timeline for all that to go down. And we pretty much planned out like the next 4 years of Bowling for Soup. So as far as that goes, there's no foreseeable end in sight, and which is great. Like, I mean, that pleases us all to right down to the ground. And so after that, it's kind of let's see what the future brings and what we want to do. We'll deal with that whenever it comes to it. But really looking forward and planning some big stuff for our, in 3 years it'll be the 25th anniversary, and there'll be some big stuff coming for that. And so we're just looking forward to riding the ride for a little while longer.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, that's about it. Cheers, Eric, for taking time out to have a quick chat with me.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Best of luck now with everything in the near future, and hopefully I can catch up with you again very soon.
All right.